Namaskar. Viewers, welcome to this session of Gyan Darshan this early evening. And I am Nandini Sinha Kapur, Professor and Director presently in the School of Interdisciplinary and Trans-Disciplinary Studies at Indira Gandhi National Open University. We are going to begin with a series on Indian philosophy for the next few months. And today with us, we have a very distinguished scholar of philosophy and a very well-known professor and teacher of philosophy who's very well-known all over the world. So we welcome Professor Balaganapati Devarakonda ji. Welcome,
Namaste.
sir.
Namaste.
He is a senior professor of philosophy in the Department of Philosophy, University of Delhi, and its former head of the Department of Philosophy at University of Delhi. Very recently, he has been nominated as a visiting professor in Indology to West Indies by Indian Council of Cultural Relations. Now, let me give a brief introduction of Professor Balaganapati ji before we come to the topic of his presentation. His research interests are in the areas of Indian philosophy, philosophy of religion, social and political philosophy, and philosophical practice. In addition to teaching and research, Professor Balaganapati is a certified philosophical counselor by American Philosophy Practitioners Association, New York. Some of his publications, it is a long list of his publications, mainly the list of books. I'm going to take some of the eminent publications. Philosophical Doctrines of Andhakas, Exploring Early Buddhist Sects of Andhra. Springer, published by Springer, Briefs in Religious Studies series. Conditional Designation of Artificial Legal Entities, a Post-Anthropocene Dynamic Jurisprudence. Shifts in the Classical Indian Conception of Philosophical Practice, Vedic, Itihas, Puranic and Darshanik. Global Lockdown Calendar. Revisiting Dana, a Response to Eurocentric Approaches. Relearning to be at peace, exploring alternative conceptions. Hinduism in Thailand, its presence and absence. Role of Guru as an interpreter of Dharma, and the list goes on. He is a project fellow of Great Transition in India, a Korean perspective on Indian studies by Institute of Indian Studies, Hankuk University of Foreign Studies in South Korea. He has been working on a project titled Yoga Consciousness in Mahabharata, the Ethical Value for Societal Political Well-being. Professor Balaganapati ji has been a guest editor for special issue on Indian perspectives on philosophical counseling for the Journal of APPA, American Philosophical Association, Philosophical Practice. He has been associated with the editorial boards of various journals such as Journal of Human Values, Journal of Foundational Research, University of Rajasthan, Jaipur, Journal of Indian Council of Philosophical Research, among many more. He's been in the board of many colleges, governing body of Delhi University of many colleges. With that brief introduction, because he has many accolades, now I welcome and invite Professor Balaganapati ji to deliver his presentation on the topic for today, Thinking Beyond Opposites, Reflections on Indian Epistemology. Sir, we'll begin by asking you this simple question about the title of your presentation. What do you mean or what do we understand by thinking beyond opposites? Reflections on Indian epistemology.
Firstly, let me thank you, ma'am, for this kind introduction, and also I'm happy to be associated with the Gyan Darshan program of IGNOU. It's a privilege to be a part of this program and being able to reach out to a number of audience that we have, participants that we have who get the benefit of Gyan Darshan. To begin, to talk about the theme that we have chosen, thinking beyond opposites. The first question that should hit us is, do we think through opposites, that we need to go beyond opposites? What is this? How do we understand this? How do we understand the relation of opposites and thinking? Is something that actually we should get troubled and also try to get into it. Okay, so let me briefly talk about that. See, as a school child, each one of us might have got introduced to something called synonyms, where we try to look for the similar words, right? And also we do come across something called antonyms. We are introduced to opposites, the concepts which are opposites. That has a stronger root in the way we look at the world itself. How do we conceptualize the world itself? Okay, so for instance, when people tell us about opposites, if you mention about like earth, and we tend to say that sky is the opposite of earth, and if I say fire, ma'am, can you give me the opposite of it?
Is it water?
Yeah, in terms of water, and this list goes on. You know, if I say girl, then you come up with boy, etc. So in a way, the way the conceptualization, the framework through which we look at the world becomes fixed with these opposites. So this is what we call binary epistemology. No, we all know about binary logic that we talk about when it comes to computers in terms of 0-1, but this is more human. I mean, this is getting operated within the human being than being applied on computers or anything. So we do conceptualize the world in terms of these two categories, like if one is on this side, there is another one on this side, and these two are opposites, and we have to deal with the world in this way. So this is one kind of conceptualization of world with which we live, with which we have nurtured ourselves, and we are proceeding with the world. I am arguing, or I am also trying to present the other case studies that we have in terms of Indian philosophical tradition or African or other Eastern philosophical traditions, which necessarily doesn't talk or help us to understand world, or conceptualize world only in terms of opposites. So that is how there is a need to go beyond this binary or opposite kind of thinking. No, thinking through the opposites, we need to go beyond that. So that's what broadly I have in my mind when I thought we should, when we thought of this talk, this discussion, ma'am.
Right. That was a good explanation about thinking beyond opposites and reflections in Indian epistemology. From there, we can go on to the next query. What is epistemology, and how is Indian epistemology uniquely distinct?
Yeah, I have used this word epistemology, which belongs to, philosophy. In philosophy, epistemology is one of the very significant branches which deals with theory of knowledge. So now, since I have used that word, it is justifiable that I should explain what it is for us, So, and how it is related to this binary, thinking through opposites or thinking beyond opposites. So let me explain that briefly for the sake of the audience, ma'am. In fact, epistemology is the way through which you acquire knowledge. All of us have acquired certain kind of knowledge through different means. So epistemology basically tries to explain what are different ways through which you acquire the knowledge that you already possess. This is important because this is what helps you to conceptualize the world for yourself. So each one of us may have conceptualized the world in our own unique way based on our own unique experiences. Okay, so that is possible only because we also have developed certain kind of apparatus, epistemological apparatus, means of knowledge through which we have conceptualized our reality. When we talk about this, I believe in the world we have different philosophical traditions. For example, we have Greek tradition, we have German tradition, we have Chinese, Indian, different kind of world traditions exist, and each one of them may have their own unique approach to how do you conceptualize reality. So this is where Indian tradition is unique in the sense that it provides a list of at least 8 different varieties of pramanas, I mean the means of knowledge, and it also talks about its own unique way of conceptualizing the reality that is possible. So that's where we find pratyaksha, which means perception, anumana, which is inference, shabda, which is verbal testimony, and then upamana, which is comparison, and so on. So these are all different epistemic apparatus through which we acquire the knowledge, which is really unique to Indian tradition, which we don't find in Western traditions. Here I would like to mention briefly about the Greek tradition as well, because this is what I would be talking about when I am referring to thinking through opposites or thinking beyond opposites. For instance, Greek tradition, we all know about Plato and Aristotle that we often refer to when it comes to Greek tradition. Aristotle especially talks about laws of thought. So he looks at different laws that govern the thought process itself, and he mentions that there is an excluded middle. I mean, the middle ground doesn't exist. If we are talking about a particular thing, it has to be either this or that. Okay, so there is no middle ground possible for him. Okay, which in a way gives way to understand or look at the world in a binary way. I mean, in the way that I have mentioned as conceptualizing the world in terms of opposites. So, I mean, I'm just trying to present the opposites. I mean, the different kind of traditions and their uniqueness here.
Okay, that's a very, very interesting explanation of different traditions with reference to Indian way of acquiring knowledge and perception of knowledge, and how do we reach at it, right? Although you have already mentioned about do we think in opposites, can we think beyond opposites?
Yeah, this is where this is the crux of the whole discussion that we have taken up. Let me briefly explain what is this binary epistemology and tell you how do we go beyond that, or what are dangers of thinking through opposites. Okay, so I mean, when you conceptualize, when I began saying that somehow we are introduced to the world in terms of opposites, antonyms during our childhood, saying that earth and sky are opposites, and water and fire are opposites, male, female are opposites. This epistemic structure works in terms of there are whole world is divided into 2 different conceptual categories. One is opposite of the other. If you find one in this category, its opposite would exist in this category, and you can understand one to be the absence of the other. So that is how we understand this binary epistemology which is operating within us. I mean, if we are talking about sky and earth, sky is the opposite in the sense that sky doesn't have earth and earth doesn't have sky in it. So that is how one is the absence of the other as well, which becomes very important. I mean, this is presented as opposites, which is a problematic one for me. For example, if you look at Indian tradition, as I was mentioning about the uniqueness of Indian tradition, along with Indian tradition, many traditions as well, doesn't conceptualize these elements to be opposites at all. For example, if you look at Indian tradition specifically, earth, water, fire, sky, earth, water, fire, sky, and Prithvi, Apas, Tejo, Vayu, Akashat, that we talk about, Panchabhutas, These 5 elements are considered to be the fundamental basic elements, constituent elements of the universe. And they are never considered to be opposite to one another. Unlike this binary tradition that we are talking about. And another interesting, important element is, only when these 5 elements come together, and wherever you find life, you will find these 5 elements being coexistent there. You observe any space where you find life, you will definitely find these 5 elements to be living there. Of course, one may be the absence of the other. That doesn't make them opposites in other traditions, for example, in Indian tradition, which is a very important one to be understood. When I'm saying this, please never introduce male and female to be opposites to your younger ones. If you teach that, the tender minds in the schools, you teach them saying that male and female are opposites, and then you also in a different context teach them how to deal with opposites, your opponents. What kind of a society that you can envisage by developing such kind of thinking through opposites, which is very dangerous. If you develop such kind of an epistemology in the kids, and then look for a peaceful society where everybody should coexist, where gender disparity should not be there, impossible. You cannot begin by saying that these are opposites. That is how, thinking and epistemology are so important and fundamental. And that is the very reason why philosophy has to be introduced at the school level, right? At the school level itself, you should tell them that you should not see them as opposites. Their epistemology has to be properly nurtured, So that's where, if they are not opposites, then what is it? The other question that comes forward, if they are not opposites, then what are they? Indian tradition considers them to be complementary to each other, which means the one doesn't have what the other has, and that's because, not because they are opposites, that's because they are complementary. When they come together, then the life begins. New life comes into existence. That is how male and female have to come together so that something new life emerges into the world. That's what is complementarity. That's never should be understood as opposite. So this is a very fundamental way of looking at the world, thinking beyond opposites. That is part of classical Indian Hindu Vedic tradition, which is important for us because we have to revisit our traditional philosophical standpoints so that we can look through them and introduce ourselves and also introduce our own younger ones a better kind of conceptualization of the world in which we are living so that we can have a peaceful living, peaceful coexistence. So that is how the implication of thinking beyond opposites is profound, and I think this has to be seriously taken up by all the teacher training programs, etc., and that should be introduced to the students, disseminated to the students.
Right. Thank you, sir. Now, what you have explained and spoken in the last few minutes triggers one question in my mind. This entire knowledge production based on epistemology of opposites, is it, which is not actually the Indian tradition, is it due to the influence of the Western education system or Western, that's what,
Yeah, this is another interesting, very interesting, significant, very important question to be asked, by each one of us.
Why it is ingrained in us?
Yeah.
Yes.
Since I said thinking beyond opposites is a part of the classical Indian tradition, which has continued for a long time, and of course now we were introduced with the British and Western education system, through which we got acquainted with this binary epistemology, and this is what is very important in order to decolonize our minds as well. we do talk about decolonizing, and decolonizing the mind is not possible without decolonizing our epistemology, the way we are looking and conceptualizing the world. Unfortunately, even the West has got rid of this binary epistemology and binary way of looking at things, and it has moved forward, but our education system is still, somehow settled with the fixed way of looking at things, which is very dangerous. I'm emphasizing this point again. West has moved beyond this kind of a conceptualization, but unfortunately, we are still teaching such kind of things, which is a problematic one. So we need to...
Exactly. So what you are saying, that we have retained that old tradition which came from the West, and you very rightly said that Western academia has moved beyond their tradition, but we have still stuck to that tradition which has come, and therefore we need a revision in the syllabus, in introducing new concepts, especially to the younger generation, so that the not only Indian tradition but the right way of thinking and acquiring knowledge need to be instilled, right?
And for me, this is educational as well as ethical. You should understand your own worldview in an appropriate way, which is not just educational, it is ethical.
Yes.
No, it's the right kind of thing for us to do. That is how it is an ethical enterprise. We should take up decolonization not as political, not as social, rather we should take it up as an ethical enterprise. No? That is very important to be emphasized in this context.
That's right, that's right. Yes, yes, sir. Very, very interesting. So you have already elaborated, you have given examples of thinking beyond opposites, sir, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You have. Now, and you have also possibly covered, is it that Indian epistemology facilitates thinking beyond opposites? Would you like to further give some more example or something more? Points?
As I have already gave an example of how the school teaching is happening, which can cause a lot of disruption in the society. Beyond that, if you look at the philosophical enterprise, philosophical systems of India specifically, what you find is, for example, Buddhism. Look at Buddhism. Buddha says you should not go to the extremes. No, both the extremes are dangerous. That is how he prescribes Madhya Marga.
Yes.
He says overindulgence in life, which he resorted to when he was young, and self-mortification, which he does when he goes in search of the truth. He says both of them are not real. In fact, what is the right way is to stay with the middle path. Madhya Marga is what he prescribes. Even his own philosophical conception of Pratit Samutpada tries to help us, which is dependent origination, which tries to destabilize the substantialist notion, and also destabilize the substantialist notion, and makes us understand world in terms of beyond the opposites and beyond binaries. We find similar kind of explanation in Jainism. For example, Jainism says that reality that you look at, that we exist in, is multifaceted and pluralistic, and you cannot have complete comprehensive understanding of the world or reality at any point of time. Whenever you make a statement, you are only making it from the standpoint where you stand, which means all our statements or they call it Syadvada, perspectival from one particular standpoint. So that is how you can never make any statement, you can never consider any statement to be either true or false, because it is partial and partially true, partially false as well. So that is how Jainism comes up with Syadvada. And then we also have Advaita Vedanta, which tries to explain world as Maya, which actually means indescribable, which means it is real when you are in the Vyavaharika Satta, empirical world, And it is unreal when you realize the ultimate reality, Paramarthik Satta. So that is how something which is at the same time both real and unreal cannot be described. And that is how Advaita Vedanta also tries to help us to go beyond this thinking beyond opposites. So these are very standard philosophical standpoints that we have in Indian tradition, which urge us to look at the world beyond opposites, beyond the binary epistemology.
Sir, now it's time to wind up for the session. So would you like to say in a sentence or two implications of thinking beyond binaries? Just 2 sentences.
Yeah, as I have already stated, thinking beyond binaries for the human life is very important because it can help us to have, now we are into multicultural society. Within the same family, we find people from different cultures, different religions coming together and living together. Yes. So in such kind of a society, something that can help us is definitely thinking beyond opposites, thinking beyond binaries.
Right. So what, sir, you were saying that especially in a multi-religious context, multi-societal, multi-caste, so multicultural, right, society, it is important to have our epistemology beyond opposites, right, which is rooted more in the Indian traditions.
Right.
Thank you so much, sir, Professor Balaganapati Devarakonda ji, for a wonderful exposition on the topic Thinking Beyond Opposites, Reflections on Indian Epistemology. Very insightful, very enlightening presentation. We look forward to have you again in near future in our series on Indian philosophy. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
Namaskar.
you so much for having me here in this program, ma'am. Thank you. Namaste.